All right, so I chose to do my extra credit assignment on social change. I really liked this last module because I'm also heavily involved in public health and always at my profession is simply to help increase access to care because everyone deserves access to care. I'm also a tribal member, and Native Americans have always struggled um, and are at a three have a three times higher chance of cavities than a white person. Um, and I think there's like 1 out of 5 Native or 1 out of 3 Native children have a cavity that goes left untreated. So I'm all about advocating for justice, social justice, and especially as a tribal person myself. So, anyways, I really like Module 4, and um, that's something I am going to be talking about today. So, social change. What is social change? So, sociologists define social change as changes in human interactions and relationships that transfer cultural and social institutions. These changes occur over time and often have profound and long term consequences for society. So, why is it important and why should we care? So, change is always happening, um, change is inevitable, but that's not it. We know that there's change and there's constant change, but we do not have to accept that we are powerless in the change. Um, it is the extent of which we care about the direction that social change is going, and that way that we can try to shape it and help create the kind of change that we wish to see in the world. Um, People have to step up, people have to speak up, people have to share their stories, people have to go out and make people feel uncomfortable, and uncomfortableness brings growth and gets people talking and gets people being more aware, and learning and asking questions. So social change is very important. So some causes of social change. I think understanding social change requires looking at what leads society to shift in the first place. Like why is there a need for social change? A couple ones that I wanted to talk about today is the first factor could be collective action. This means that there's strength in numbers, as as evidenced by how often large groups of people have changed the world around them through like action. Um, an example of this would be Martin Luther King Jr. Empowered people to engage in boycotts, marches, and other forms of activities of social organizations that led to desegregation and greater civil and voting rights, protection rights for people of color. The second factor could be economic change. The financial status or well being of a society can heavily influence the likelihood of social change, for better or for worse. Um, External forces, so human societies have some control over their own destinies, but every social group still falls prey to external factors and forces at times, um, such as like climate change. I think climate change is a really good example. Individual impact, so sometimes a single person can shift the value system of a given idea. Charismatic leaders of both benevolent and evil intent have latched onto social issues to inspire change in positive and negative directions. They propose alternative systems, making a differentiation between how things are and how things could be, and encourage um, more to implement these visions. And even technological innovations. There's so many new technologies coming out, our phones, tablets, laptops, gaming devices um, that often represent the first step into a new social. idea that technological change can radically alter social institutions, for instance. Um, I would say during COVID, a lot of people had to get on the computer and learn how to work via Zoom and not in person. Um, so for sure, lots of factors. I mean, these are just, I only went over five, but Um, I think one that I'm going to get into here at the end, I'm not going to talk about right now, but it's like health disparities and social determinants that I affect social change. So, like I said, I won't talk about that right now, but how to enact social change. So, I just briefly wanted to share this page because everyone can take action as an individual to advance human rights and influence social changes in a positive direction. Um, a couple things that we're just gonna quickly say is engaging in individual activism. So cultural change starts when one person at a time, while group mobilization might have more of an effect in general, larger in numbers, but you can still do your own small part by engaging in individual activism. And I will share my experience here in a little bit. Having conversations like I talked about earlier, keeping up with social trends, so knowing what's going on within that topic. Being educated on that topic is really important. And then join in with social movements, so making those connections with other people that might have similar interests and views. So, like I said, some things that I really wanted to talk about social factors that affect health disparities. So, social determinants of health, such as poverty, unequal access to healthcare, lack of access to healthcare, lack of education in healthcare, racism, are underlying contributing factors of health inequities. Um, Health disparities are preventable differences in the burden of disease. Um, Many populations experience health disparities, including people from racial and ethnic minority groups, people with disabilities, women, people who are LGBTQ plus, that's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, or other people who have limited English proficiency. Um, and this part I'm really proud of. I am a dental therapist, which is fairly new. And back in 2016, um, the chairman of my tribe went to a conference up in Alaska and learned about dental therapy. And he came to Washington State and he stood up against legislation against the Dental Association, Washington State Dental Association, and said, "We want a dental therapist." And under our sovereign nation, we were able to get one, even though Washington State at first said no. And now it has been 14 years later. Um, Washington State has been fighting, and finally, Washington State passed the bill for dental therapists to work statewide. So up until this year, up until like 2 weeks ago, um, dental therapists were only allowed to work on tribal land. And with the cumulative effort between multiple organizations and people, um, Representative Riccelli, he was the speaker and introduced this bill in front of the House and Senate and legislation, and he is a huge advocate for dental therapy and wanted to put it completely under his and I spoke in front of, sorry, House and Senate. So I think it just takes sharing their story, takes people willing to step up and share their experience. Um, and I mean, it took a lot of work, but we did it. So the picture on the upper left is from Washington State Poverty Action. They compiled a whole bunch of pictures of people who, talked and testified. I'm in there on the left-hand corner with my daughter. I set my picture recently attended the National Oral Health Conference where I was able to talk with people across the nation on dental therapy and share my story. There's so many states that are interested in adding dental therapists, but they're dealing with the same thing that Washington went through. But currently, there are 14 states that have dental therapists that have passed legislation. Only 6 of the states actually have practicing dental therapists, but there's only 3 code-accredited dental therapists schools across the nation. So I expect that to be changing in the next decades. There's going to be a lot more dental therapists. I'm also an instructor at one of the colleges that teaches dental therapy. So I just feel so fortunate, and I really look forward to sharing my story and just talking about social changes with you. Hope you have a good day. Thank you.